Some objects were never meant to be touched. Across ancient temples, royal tombs, and forgotten ruins lie artifacts that have left a trail of misfortune, madness, and unexplained death. They weren't cursed in fairy tales. They're real, and they're still here. From lost empires to haunted museums, this video explores the most chilling ancient artifacts ever uncovered and the terrifying consequences of disturbing them. If you're drawn to history's darkest mysteries, subscribe to this channel, like, share, and turn on notifications, because the past isn't done with us yet. And before we get into the video, the images in this video are only for visualization, so there is no need to pay close attention. This video is perfect to listen to while you relax, study, or drift off to sleep. In the heart of the Valley of the Kings, the sun burns hot and unforgiving over miles of lifeless rock. But beneath the surface lies something colder, something buried. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter stood at the threshold of a discovery that would change the modern world, and some believe awaken something ancient that should have remained undisturbed. After years of fruitless searching, Carter and his team unearthed the steps leading down to a sealed tomb. For weeks, anticipation built like a tremor beneath the desert floor. Then, on November 26th, Carter made a small hole in the doorway and inserted a candle. Behind him, Lord Carnarvon, the man funding the dig, asked anxiously, "Can you see anything?" Carter replied with words that have echoed through history. "Yes, wonderful things." The tomb of Tutankhamun was unlike anything ever discovered. It was intact, untouched by looters, undisturbed by time. Inside were over 5,000 artifacts, golden chariots, ceremonial daggers, alabaster jars, thrones, jewelry, statues of gods, and the now iconic death mask that has come to symbolize ancient Egypt itself. But amidst the gold and glory, there was something else, something waiting. The boy king Tutankhamun ruled during a turbulent time. His father, the pharaoh Akhenaten, had tried to upend centuries of Egyptian religion. Tutankhamun reversed much of that and died mysteriously at the age of 19. His tomb was uncommonly small for a king, hastily constructed and strangely hidden. It was as if he had been buried in secrecy or shame, or perhaps for protection. Soon after the tomb was opened, things began to go wrong. Lord Carnarvon, who had been present at the opening and first among the living to cross the threshold, was bitten by a mosquito on his cheek. The bite became infected. Within weeks, he was dead from blood poisoning. The moment of his death, according to reports, coincided with a power outage that plunged Cairo into darkness. Back in England, his dog let out a sudden, piercing howl and dropped dead. A coincidence, perhaps, but it was only the beginning. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who performed the first X-ray of the mummy, died suddenly before the results were even analyzed. George J. Gould, a wealthy American financier, visited the tomb and fell gravely ill shortly after. He died of pneumonia a few days later. Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother and a strong supporter of the expedition, died soon after, blind and racked with illness. Hugh Evelyn White, a British archaeologist who worked at the site, reportedly wrote a suicide note in his own blood before hanging himself. His note included the words, "I have succumbed to a curse." A.C. Mace, one of Carter's closest associates, died of arsenic poisoning after a long, unexplained illness. Richard Bethel, Carter's personal secretary, was found smothered to death in his London bed. His father, Lord Westbury, leapt from a building shortly after. In his suicide note, he expressed dread about the curse that surrounded his family. By 1930, at least 11 individuals connected to the tomb's discovery had died under suspicious or sudden circumstances. The press called it the curse of the pharaoh. The phrase, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the king's rest," was widely quoted, allegedly found inscribed in the tomb, though no such inscription has ever been confirmed by scholars. Still, the fear was real. Museum curators refused to display certain items. Guards reported strange events around the relics, shadows where none should be, lights flickering, sudden sickness, silent rooms that felt oppressively heavy. And yet, Howard Carter, the man who stood at the center of it all, survived. He lived for over 16 years after the tomb's discovery and died quietly in 1939, but he never became wealthy, never achieved the fame he'd expected, and remained increasingly isolated as the deaths around him mounted. Those close to him said he became withdrawn, superstitious, nervous. Some believe the curse didn't kill him because he never directly profited from the tomb. Others said he was protected, or perhaps marked in a different way. Whatever the truth, Carter's legacy is tied forever to that moment he first saw into the tomb, that first glimpse of gold in the flickering candlelight. Modern historians and scientists have offered rational explanations. They blame ancient mold spores, bacteria sealed in for centuries, or coincidence amplified by media hysteria. But science cannot explain why so many of the deaths happened in rapid succession, or why they all shared one thing in common, a direct link to the tomb of the boy king. And science cannot explain the silence that hung in the air of that burial chamber, or the uncanny eyes painted on the coffins, watching, waiting. Tutankhamun's tomb was sealed for a reason, buried in haste, forgotten by design, not to protect the treasure inside, but to protect us from what had been buried with it. In opening that tomb, we recovered a piece of history. And perhaps we also disturbed something meant to remain lost. The Hope Diamond. To the untrained eye, it's just a jewel. But the Hope Diamond is no ordinary gem. At 45.52 carats, its deep blue glow seems almost unnatural, not warm and bright like most diamonds, but cold, like moonlight on still water. It's one of the most famous gemstones in the world, and also one of the most feared. Legends say it brings ruin, madness, and death to any who dare possess it. Some call it cursed, others a magnet for misfortune. But when you trace the trail of its owners across centuries, a strange pattern emerges: beauty followed by blood. The diamond story begins in India, likely from the Koh-i-Noor mine in the 1600s. At the time, it was even larger, a rough-cut blue stone said to glow in moonlight. A French gem merchant, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, acquired it during his travels and sold it to King Louis XIV of France. Soon after, Tavernier fell from grace. He was exiled, and according to one version of the legend, he died from a fever while being mauled by wolves in Russia. Louis XIV had the diamond recut into a more elegant 67-carat jewel and wore it as part of his ceremonial regalia, calling it the French Blue. It was passed down through the French monarchy, but it did not bring fortune. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who inherited the stone, were both executed during the French Revolution. Before their fall, Marie reportedly wore the diamond during lavish events, completely unaware of its rumored history. During the chaos, The gem was stolen, vanishing into the shadows of French Revolution. What followed was a string of strange disappearances, forged identities, and mysterious deaths. The diamond resurfaced in London decades later, recut and renamed the Hope Diamond, after Henry Philip Hope, a wealthy collector who purchased it. The Hope family fortune declined rapidly after the acquisition. The diamond was passed down through heirs, but each struggled with financial ruin, gambling debts, and failed ventures. It was as though the gem devoured wealth as easily as it reflected light. By the early 20th century, the Hope Diamond was bouncing between collectors and jewelers, each of whom seemed to suffer once it entered their possession. One of the most notable was Evelyn Walsh McLean, a wealthy American heiress who wore the diamond publicly, even adorning her dog with it at lavish parties. She dismissed the curse, calling it nonsense. Then, her life unraveled. Her young son was killed in a car accident. Her daughter died of a drug overdose. Her husband left her for another woman and later died in a mental institution. Evelyn died alone, bankrupt, addicted, and surrounded by tragedy. The gem was eventually acquired by famed jeweler Harry Winston, who donated it to the Smithsonian Institution in 1958. How he delivered it? By wrapping it in brown paper and sending it through the U.S. Postal Service. But even there, the story didn't end. The mailman who delivered the Hope Diamond, James Todd, reportedly crushed his leg in an accident soon after. Then, his wife died. His dog was strangled by a leash, and his house caught fire, all within weeks. Coincidence? Or did the curse simply travel through the box? Today, the Hope Diamond sits behind glass in the Smithsonian, one of the most visited objects in the museum. Cameras flash, children press their faces to the case. No one sees the trail of ruin behind it. Scientists have tried to explain it. They talk about boron trapped in the stone causing its blue hue, about how ultraviolet light makes it emit a red phosphorescence that glows even after the lights go out, a rare, unsettling trait. But for centuries, no one feared the science. They feared the silence that followed its arrival, the deaths, the madness, the way fortunes shriveled and families collapsed. It's just a jewel, a piece of compressed carbon and trace minerals, and yet, what else could carve such a perfect path of destruction? Some believe the original stone was stolen from the eye of a sacred statue in a Hindu temple, and that the priests placed a curse on it to punish anyone who possessed it thereafter. Whether that origin is fact or folklore, the diamond's history is soaked in suffering, and still it endures, untouchable now, behind bulletproof glass, under armed guard. But curses don't need to be held in the hand. They only need to be witnessed. The Hope Diamond's true weight isn't its carats, it's the centuries of ruin and sorrow it seems to carry with it. It glitters in the dark. It waits behind glass. But its story is not over. Not as long as people keep looking at it, wondering if it's watching back.
There are treasures that dazzle with their brilliance. And then there are those that burn. The Koh-i-Noor is a diamond that has passed through the hands of kings, emperors, conquerors, and countless dead men. Its name means mountain of light, but for centuries it has cast a shadow over every throne it has touched. Unlike the Hope Diamond, the Koh-i-Noor isn't whispered about in dark corners or hidden in vaults. It sits in the British Crown jewels, mounted in the Queen Mother's coronation crown, viewed by millions each year. But what most don't realize is that this diamond, so public, so regal, is considered one of the most cursed objects in history. because almost every man who has worn it has either died violently or been dethroned. The story begins over 700 years ago in the Indian subcontinent, likely in what is now Andhra Pradesh. The original diamond may have weighed over 180 carats in its uncut form. Its early history is veiled in myth, but the first recorded mention comes in the Baburnama, the memoirs of Babur, the founder of the Mughal Empire, who took it as war loot in the 16th century. He claimed the gem was worth half the daily expense of the entire world. But Babur's empire was soaked in blood. His own son Humayun nearly died, the empire nearly collapsed, and many of Babur's successors met brutal ends. The diamond was passed down through generations, each time claimed through conquest, betrayal, or death. Shah Jahan, the emperor who built the Taj Mahal, placed the Koh-i-Noor into his peacock throne. Later, he would be imprisoned by his own son and die in captivity, only able to see his beloved Taj Mahal from a window. Then came Nadir Shah, the Persian ruler who invaded Delhi in 1739. After a massacre, he looted the peacock throne and took the Koh-i-Noor with him, supposedly whispering the name Koh-i-Noor upon seeing it, giving the diamond its modern title. Within a few years, Nadir Shah was assassinated. The diamond passed to his generals, then to the Durrani Empire of Afghanistan. Each new ruler who possessed it either died suddenly, was betrayed, or lost everything. Eventually, the Koh-i-Noor fell into the hands of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the powerful Sikh ruler of the Punjab region in the early 1800s. He wore it proudly and refused to part with it, even in death. But death came nonetheless. After Singh's passing, the British East India Company invaded, and by 1849, the Punjab had fallen. The diamond was taken, not just stolen, but seized as a symbol of total conquest. It was forcibly handed over by Ranjit Singh's 10-year-old son, Maharaja Duleep Singh, during the Treaty of Lahore. The boy was exiled. He would never return to his homeland. The Koh-i-Noor was sent to Britain and presented to Queen Victoria. She had it recut, reducing its size and possibly its curse, but it was never again worn by a man. After the string of violent downfalls, British superstition grew quietly but intensely. The curse was never officially acknowledged, but from Queen Victoria onward, the Koh-i-Noor has only been worn by female members of the royal family, never a king. To this day, it remains embedded in the crown once worn by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and more recently displayed at state events. The curse, it seems, does not strike the crown if the wearer is a woman. But the diamond's ominous legacy is not just superstition. India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan have all demanded its return, claiming it was stolen. Political debates rage over its ownership. In 2010, a Pakistani official even called it a stolen stone, a symbol of colonial subjugation. And while the British government has refused to give it back, citing legal ownership and historical precedent, the fact remains: every nation that once held the Koh-i-Noor lost it in blood. Scientists describe the Koh-i-Noor as a rare Type 2A diamond, chemically pure, nearly flawless, yet imperfectly shaped due to the way it was cut in the 19th century. But for millions, it's not chemistry that matters. It's the weight of conquest. It's the trail of ruin it leaves behind. And it's the silence that surrounds it now, locked behind glass in the Tower of London. Brilliant, beautiful, and untouchable. The curse of the Koh-i-Noor is not whispered like other legends. It's not hidden in shadow or spoken of in ghost stories. It's displayed with pride, worn in ceremonies, carried in state processions. But that doesn't mean it's safe. It only means the story isn't over. That perhaps one day it will pass to another hand and the cycle will begin again. After all, no man has worn it and kept his throne. Not yet.
It doesn't have a name. It was never a pharaoh or a queen. It wasn't entombed in gold or buried beneath a pyramid. And yet, for over a century, the so-called unlucky mummy has been blamed for death, madness, disaster, and even the sinking of the Titanic. It isn't a full mummy at all, just the inner coffin lid of a woman believed to have lived around 950 BCE during Egypt's 21st dynasty. Made of painted wood and plaster, the artifact depicts a serene, noble woman with wide, black-lined eyes and an expressionless gaze. But according to some, it watches you back. The coffin lid was unearthed in the late 1800s, somewhere in the Theban necropolis near Luxor. Little is known about the woman it once protected. Her name, her story, her role in society, all lost. But soon after it was removed from Egypt and shipped to England, the misfortunes began. The object passed into the hands of a series of private collectors. One of the first, a well-known English traveler, was reportedly killed in a shooting accident just days after acquiring it. The next owner, a wealthy businessman, lost his fortune and died of an unexplained illness. Then a journalist who tried to photograph the lid had the negatives develop into black smudges. When he returned for another attempt, his camera exploded in his hands. Still, the artifact continued to pass through hands and bodies. A string of strange deaths, accidents, and reversals of fortune followed. So many, in fact, that it gained a nickname in the London press, the unlucky mummy. By the early 20th century, it was donated to the British Museum, where it still resides today, displayed under low light in room 62. But even there, the curse didn't stop. Museum staff began to report strange noises at night, footsteps in empty halls, sudden chills, displays falling with no cause. A guard assigned to the artifact reportedly died on duty without explanation. Another suffered a stroke after working near it for several weeks. A visitor who mocked the lid was said to have slipped on the stairs and broken their hip moments later. The museum has officially denied any curse, stating that no evidence supports the claims. But unofficially, some employees have requested to be transferred away from the mummy's room. Others refuse to touch it during maintenance or rotation. Then came the Titanic story, the most famous and the most fiercely debated. According to legend, in 1912, the unlucky mummy was being transported to America aboard the RMS Titanic, hidden in the cargo hold. The curse, some say, followed it onto the ship and pulled it into the depths with over 1,500 souls. But here's where it gets strange. There is no record of the artifact being on the Titanic's manifest. The British Museum insists it never left London. And yet, the story refuses to die. Because when survivors from the Titanic began recounting the disaster, some spoke of a strange Egyptian artifact among the cargo, something passengers whispered about, something some believed had doomed the voyage.
One version claims the mummy had been sold to an American collector and was secretly loaded aboard. Another says it was smuggled out of the museum under a different name. Still others insist the artifact never left Britain, but influenced the voyage anyway through the greed and hubris surrounding it. All impossible to prove, but none easily dismissed. In 1934, British author Bertram Fletcher Robinson published an investigation on the artifact's supposed curse. Within months, he was dead, at age 36. His death was ruled pneumonia, but some of his friends believed he had been warned and ignored it. Even in the decades since, writers and researchers have found themselves haunted by the story. One spiritualist wrote that she could feel a pressure like drowning when near the lid. A psychic claimed the woman buried beneath the wood had been a priestess of Amun-Ra, wrongfully punished in death and now trapped between worlds. Still others say the curse is not mystical, but psychological. That the face on the coffin, wide-eyed, cold, eternally watching, evokes something primal. Something human beings are not meant to confront for too long. The unease it inspires may not be a curse, but a mirror. The unlucky mummy has never been linked to natural disasters or mass outbreaks like some cursed relics. It doesn't kill instantly. It waits. Its curse is subtle, slow, and lingering, like rot in the foundations of a house, a creeping presence, a weight. It's never been proven, but even now, museum visitors sometimes report a sudden wave of nausea, dizziness, or an unshakable urge to leave the room when standing before it. Some take photos, some walk away laughing, and some look directly into its eyes and feel something looking back. It's not the most dangerous relic in the world. It's not the most valuable. But perhaps that's what makes it more dangerous. Because sometimes the most cursed objects aren't the ones people fear. They're the ones we keep putting on display.
The cursed crystal skulls. They shouldn't exist. Smooth, polished, and perfectly shaped, the crystal skulls seem to defy time and logic. Cut from solid quartz with incredible precision, some claim they date back thousands of years, crafted by ancient Mesoamerican civilizations long before advanced tools were even imagined. But behind their cold, glassy eyes lies something more than mystery. Stories of death, visions, curses, and the unsettling feeling that these skulls weren't made for us. The most famous of the skulls is the Mitchell-Hedges skull, allegedly discovered in 1924 in the ruins of a Mayan city in modern-day Belize. According to the story, 17-year-old Anna Mitchell-Hedges, daughter of the British explorer Frederick Mitchell-Hedges, found the skull buried under a collapsed altar in a crumbling temple. She described it as perfectly clear, with removable jaw and flawless symmetry. Carved from a single piece of quartz, the skull weighed 11 pounds and looked eerily lifelike, more so than any pre-Columbian artifact ever recorded. Locals, Anna said, feared it. Shamans refused to enter the room with it, and soon the stories began. People who touched the skull fell ill. Cameras malfunctioned in its presence. One researcher claimed to have visions of death and destruction just by looking into its hollow sockets. Others reported electrical disturbances, dreams of ancient rituals, and sudden outbursts of paranoia. Anna herself believed the skull had psychic properties, that it emitted energy or perhaps even a consciousness. She kept it with her for decades, refusing to let scientists study it until much later in life. By then, rumors had long taken root.
that the skull was used in rituals involving human sacrifice, that it was one of 13 skulls scattered across the globe, said to be the keys to mankind's forgotten knowledge or its destruction. Some claimed the skulls were created by the Atlanteans. Others said they were gifts from extraterrestrials. Still others believed they were forged to store the memories of past civilizations, waiting to be unlocked. But not all who searched for the skulls lived to tell the tale. Several collectors who acquired lesser-known crystal skulls met mysterious fates. One was found drowned in his own pool, though no water had been disturbed. Another died in a car accident hours after removing a skull from its display case. A third suffered a stroke while examining a skull under magnification. Skeptics point to coincidence. Believers say the skulls were never meant to be separated, that when scattered, they bring chaos, that when reunited, they may bring something else. But here's where the mystery deepens and fractures. Multiple crystal skulls, including the Mitchell-Hedges skull, have been tested by experts. Some show tool marks from rotary drills, suggesting modern manufacture, not ancient craftsmanship. The British Museum, which holds another crystal skull, confirmed that their specimen was likely created in the 19th century Europe, possibly as part of a wave of forgeries meant to capitalize on growing Western fascination with the mystical Americas. In other words, the skulls might be fakes. But if they are, why do so many people experience the same paranoia, illness, and dread in their presence? Why do objects carved in a London workshop provoke the same fear as artifacts pulled from a Mayan tomb? Can an object become cursed not by age, but by belief? Some researchers propose the skulls are tulpas, physical forms charged with psychic energy by human thought. Others point to the quartz itself, a piezoelectric crystal capable of storing electromagnetic energy. Could the skulls be amplifying emotion, fear, or trauma from those who interact with them? And if so, how many minds have they touched? The Mitchell-Hedges skull now resides in the hands of collectors, occasionally shown at exhibitions, but always under tight control. Visitors often report unease, headaches, or the sense of being watched. One psychic claimed the skull contained thousands of voices, trapped souls whispering from a dying civilization. Another claimed it emitted frequencies that caused hallucinations. Still another said nothing, only wept uncontrollably when placed in the same room. In the end, the truth may never be clear. The skulls might be hoaxes, brilliant deceptions crafted for profit. They might be relics, created for sacred ritual, stripped of meaning by time. Or they might be something else entirely. Vessels for memory, mirrors for fear, or keys to knowledge we were never meant to hold. Whether ancient or modern, real or forged, the skulls have done something few artifacts ever manage. They made people believe in curses, in lost knowledge, in the possibility that some things lie beyond the reach of science. They sit silently, lifeless, cold. But indeed, for those who've looked too long into their eyes,
they say it pierced the side of Christ. A Roman weapon, iron-tipped and unremarkable in design, used in one of the most iconic acts in religious history. A single thrust into the ribs of a dying man on a hill outside Jerusalem. The moment was brief, but according to legend, it marked the beginning of something eternal. From that moment forward, the weapon ceased to be just a spear. It became something more. A relic, a key, a curse. It's been called many names: the Holy Lance, the Spear of Longinus, and most ominously, the Spear of Destiny. Because for nearly 2,000 years, People have believed this relic does not merely symbolize power, it bestows it. And those who possess it are said to hold sway over the fate of nations, for better or for ruin. According to Christian tradition, the Roman centurion who wielded the spear was Longinus, a soldier said to have been blind in one eye. When he pierced Jesus, blood and water poured from the wound and splashed onto his face, restoring his sight. Longinus converted to Christianity and was later martyred. The weapon, legend says, was hidden, guarded, and eventually passed down through the empires of the earth. The spear emerged throughout history as more than myth. It was said to have been carried by Constantine the Great, the first Roman emperor to embrace Christianity. Before a decisive battle, he claimed to see a vision of the cross and took up the spear. He won and redefined the Western world. Later, the lance was said to have passed to Charlemagne, the ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. According to chroniclers, he never went into battle without it and never lost a fight. But when the spear accidentally slipped from his hand during a campaign, he fell from his horse and died shortly after. Was it coincidence? Or had the spear truly become more than iron? By the 10th century, the spear was known as a relic of immense power. Kings and emperors sought it not for faith, but for dominance. It was believed that any man who held the spear of destiny could not be defeated, but that losing it meant certain death. The relic eventually found its way to Vienna, placed under heavy guard and reverence in the Hofburg Palace. It became a symbol of spiritual and political authority. Priests guarded it, rulers invoked it, and with each new generation, its legend deepened. But what makes the spear so feared is not only its mythological origins, it's the strange pattern of downfall and destruction surrounding those who sought it. Some rose to unimaginable power, and then fell just as fast. Skeptics argue that the Spear of Destiny is simply a relic inflated by centuries of superstition. Tests suggest parts of the weapon may date back only to the early medieval period, far too recent to have pierced anyone at Golgotha. In fact, multiple holy lances exist, one in Armenia, another in Rome, and still another discovered during the First Crusade in Antioch. But the spear in Vienna, the Hofburg spear, remains the most famous and the most feared. Because it's not just a relic, it's a symbol of control, of prophecy, of blood. The shape is simple. A long iron shaft split at the tip, reinforced with a golden sleeve and twisted wire. No jewels, no elaborate design. And yet, when you stand before it, there's a palpable sense that this object has moved through centuries, not just time. Empires have risen around it. Wars have been waged in its name, and through it all, the spear has remained eerily silent, as though it remembers more than any man could. Some modern theorists believe the legend of the spear is less about divine magic and more about the belief it inspires. The idea that whoever holds it is invincible becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a psychological weapon rather than a spiritual one, a tool of confidence or delusion. Others suggest the spear is a type of ritual object passed between elite societies and secret orders, each convinced of its hidden power. A relic not of Christian mercy, but of ancient blood rights lost to history. No one can say for sure, because no one knows where its journey truly began. Today, the Spear of Destiny rests behind glass in Vienna's Hofburg Palace. Seen by thousands, understood by none. It has not been wielded in centuries, but perhaps it doesn't need to be. Some objects affect history by being touched.
others by simply being seen. And the Spear of Destiny has been seen by kings, emperors, and conquerors alike, each one believing they were chosen, each one believing they were in control. But history suggests otherwise. The spear doesn't grant power. It tests those who seek it. And when they fail, as they always do, it simply waits for the next hand.
In 79 CE, the Roman city of Pompeii vanished in a single day. Mount Vesuvius erupted with no warning. Fire, ash, and smoke blanketed the sky. The air turned black. Streets melted beneath volcanic debris. People ran. Some hid. But most, over 2,000, never made it out. For nearly 2 millennia, their city remained frozen in time beneath over 20 feet of ash. Preserved, untouched, forgotten. Until it was uncovered. And that's when the second tragedy began. The excavation of Pompeii began in the 18th century, a grand archaeological marvel. Streets reappeared, villas, frescoes, mosaics, entire lives exhumed in perfect, chilling detail. And with them came artifacts, statues, jewelry, pottery, tools, even household altars, the belongings of a city that never saw its final moment coming. Many of these relics were removed, collected, displayed in museums, sold to private collectors. And that's when the stories started. It began subtly. Researchers, workers, and curators began to experience unease, whispers in empty rooms, sudden illnesses, terrifying dreams. One archaeologist, after handling a collection of household idols, suffered a stroke the following week. Another lost his vision temporarily after cataloging objects found in a dining room near the Forum. But it was the tourists who told the most haunting stories. They came to Pompeii expecting a historic site. They left shaken. Some claimed to feel a presence walking just behind them in the ruined streets. Others heard voices in rooms where no one stood, shadows flitting across doorways, cold winds in the dead heat of summer. Many dismissed it as imagination, suggestion, the eerie atmosphere of a dead city. Until something stranger happened. The letters. Starting in the 1990s, the archaeological park of Pompeii began receiving handwritten notes, then emails, then packages, all from visitors, sometimes weeks, sometimes years after their trip, all saying the same thing. They had taken something, and now they wanted to give it back. The letters came from all over the world. One woman returned a fragment of marble, writing that since stealing it, she had endured 3 surgeries, a divorce, and the death of her dog. Another man sent back a handful of tiles, claiming he had suffered from constant nightmares of people screaming and choking. Others returned pieces of pottery, coins, bits of volcanic rock, all items never meant to leave the city. Many of the letters used the same word, cursed. Pompeii's staff eventually created an archive of these letters, hundreds of them, some filled with desperation, others simply remorseful. One read, "Please, I beg you, take this back. Since I took it, nothing in my life has gone right." Another, "We were only trying to keep a souvenir, but now my daughter is sick, my husband has lost his job, and I see shadows in our home." Yet another included no note at all, only the artifact, and a single photograph, torn in half. The question persists, are Pompeii's artifacts cursed? Or are the curses guilt? Some psychologists suggest that the intense emotional weight of the city, the sudden death, the preservation of terror in ash, creates a kind of moral haunting. Those who take something from Pompeii don't just remove an object, they carry the memory of a tragedy with them. And perhaps that memory remembers them back. There's also the matter of the plaster casts, the haunting forms of men, women, and children, their final moments frozen in writhing agony. These were created by archaeologists who poured plaster into the air pockets left behind by decayed bodies. The results are lifelike. Too lifelike. Many say the casts are what really give Pompeii its power, not just artifacts, but ghosts made solid. Witnesses of a moment they can never escape. Some say they can still hear the breath of those figures in the quietest parts of the ruins. Others claim the eyes, though hollow, follow them. But it's not just the objects that haunt, it's the act of taking them. Each stolen piece carries with it the weight of a stolen life. A ring from a vanished bride, a tile from a child's room, a statue from a household altar that once protected a family who never made it out. To remove them is to disturb the dead. Today, Pompeii has strict rules against taking anything from the site. But, despite this, the packages keep coming. Artifacts mailed back in secret, apologies scribbled on crumpled paper, desperate pleas for forgiveness. The curse of Pompeii, if it exists, isn't about death or possession. It's about reminder that history is not silent, that suffering echoes, and that some cities, though buried, never rest. We treat ruins as stories, museums as memory, but in places like Pompeii, the line between the past and the present is paper thin. A place that died in an instant continues to speak across centuries, warning us not to turn its pain into souvenirs. Not everything lost should be held, and not every relic wants to be remembered.
In 1991, high in the Ötzi Alps on the border between Austria and Italy, two hikers stumbled upon what they believed was a modern corpse trapped in melting ice. Lying face down, partially exposed, the figure was weathered, rigid, and surrounded by primitive tools. It was not a climber lost to a recent storm. It was something far older. What they had found was a man over 5,000 years old, preserved almost perfectly by snow, ice, and time. He would come to be known as Ötzi the Iceman. And from the moment he was pulled from the glacier, death began to follow those who touched him. Ötzi is one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in modern history. He was frozen mid-stride, carrying a copper axe, a longbow, a quiver of unfinished arrows, a bearskin hat, a cloak woven from grasses, and even a small medicine kit made of birch fungus with natural antibiotic properties. Inside his stomach, his final meal, ibex meat and einkorn wheat, still lingered. His body bore signs of old injuries, whipworm parasites, blackened lungs from long-term smoke exposure, and over 60 carbon tattoos, possibly for pain relief or ritual purposes. But perhaps most fascinating and ominous was how he died. CT scans revealed a deep arrow wound lodged in his left shoulder. There were signs of blunt trauma to his head, defensive cuts on his hands. Ötzi wasn't a peaceful traveler who perished in the cold. He was hunted, killed, possibly betrayed. And then the glacier sealed him away, a silent witness to a forgotten murder from the Copper Age. As the world celebrated his discovery, a strange pattern began to emerge, one that has led many to believe that disturbing Ötzi came at a cost. Within years of his excavation, several key individuals connected to him began to die, in sudden, violent, or mysterious circumstances. The first was Rainer Henn, the the forensic pathologist who examined Ötzi's body by hand and placed it in the body bag. Just a year later, he died in a car crash on the way to a conference to discuss Ötzi. Then there was Kurt Fritz, the mountain guide who helped retrieve the body from the glacier. Despite being an experienced climber, he died in an avalanche, the only one in his group to be caught and killed. Next was Helmut Simon, the German tourist who first discovered the mummy. In 2004, he vanished during a solo hike. 8 days later, his body was recovered. He had fallen into a ravine during a sudden snowstorm, eerily close to where he had once met Ötzi. As if echoing the pattern, Dieter Warnecke, the rescue team leader who recovered Simon's body, died of a heart attack within hours of Simon's funeral. He was just 45, fit, and had no prior health conditions. Then came Konrad Spindler, the lead archaeologist on the Ötzi project and the man most publicly associated with the Iceman. He openly mocked the idea of a curse, calling it media hype and superstition. Years later, he died after a long battle with a rare and degenerative neurological disease. Others followed: filmmakers, researchers, assistants. In total, at least 7 people closely connected to Ötzi's discovery or research have died, each one pushing the theory of a curse further into the public imagination. Skeptics argue that the deaths are purely coincidental. Many involved were mountaineers or older academics with natural health risks, but the pattern remains disturbing. All of them died after contact with Ötzi, often in unnatural or eerily poetic ways. Is it psychological? A case of cursed expectation shaping perception? Or is there something else buried in the ice? Some have speculated that Ötzi, as a figure of ritual or spiritual significance, may have been tied to ancient burial customs. His gear and tattoos suggest shamanistic roles. Perhaps disturbing his body awakened not just curiosity, but something much older, something not meant to be unearthed. Others offer a scientific explanation, pointing to ancient bacteria or pathogens locked inside his remains. Ötzi is a time capsule of prehistoric biology, and although no confirmed infections have occurred, the idea of ancient microbes surviving in frozen corpses has been the subject of serious scientific inquiry. Could touching his body have exposed people to forgotten diseases? Or is the real infection not biological, but psychological? A slow unraveling triggered by guilt, fear, and the weight of having brought the dead back into the light. Today, Ötzi lies in a glass chamber in the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. The climate is carefully controlled, the lighting is dim. His body is displayed behind thick glass, curled on his side, lips pulled back slightly from his preserved teeth as if mid-whisper. Tourists stare, scientists measure. Cameras click. But no one touches him anymore. The arrow that ended his life remains lodged in his shoulder. The slash on his hand still gapes. His eyes are closed, but somehow he sees. Those who work near him speak of strange feelings, of being watched, of time slowing in the chamber, of a heavy silence that hums like a presence. Some avoid his room entirely. Some say nothing at all. Because Ötzi is not just a relic, he's a person. A victim of ancient violence, a man stolen from his mountain grave, and in the silence of his frozen tomb, he had found peace. Until we brought him back. And now he lingers. Not quite dead, not fully at rest, just waiting.
It looks ordinary. A small, antique wine cabinet, dark wood, carved details, faded hinges. Something you'd pass at a flea market without a second glance. But the people who've owned it say otherwise. They say it's cursed, that it contains something no one should ever set free, a restless spirit, a thing older than memory, a Dybbuk. In Jewish folklore, a Dybbuk is a malevolent, dislocated soul, a dead spirit that refuses to move on. Unlike ghosts, it doesn't just linger, it clings, attaching itself to the living, feeding off suffering, fear, and guilt. A Dybbuk doesn't haunt a house, it haunts you. The story of the Dybbuk Box begins in the early 2000s when a cantique dealer named Kevin Mannis purchased it from an estate sale in Oregon. The seller was the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor who had fled Poland during the war. The woman told Kevin one thing: this box was never meant to be opened. Inside, he found 2 locks of hair tied with string, a dried rosebud, a small golden goblet, and a candlestick holder. But it wasn't the contents that disturbed him. It was what happened next. Within days of bringing the box home, Kevin reported a series of horrifying events. Shattered light bulbs inexplicably broken, unbearable odors, cat urine and jasmine, doors slamming by themselves, sudden health problems, nightmares of a demonic old woman standing in the shadows, staring. His mother suffered a stroke the same day he gave for the box. Employees at his shop begged him to remove it after seeing shadow figures and hearing unexplained voices. Terrified, Kevin tried to sell it. And so the Dybbuk Box began to move from one owner to another. Each person who acquired the box reported eerily similar symptoms: hair falling out, nightmares and insomnia, pets behaving violently or dying, electronics failing when near the box, deep feelings of anxiety and despair, apparitions in whispers at night. One college student returned the box after just 3 days, claiming he couldn't breathe while sleeping. Another man said he woke up every night at exactly 3:33 a.m., drenched in sweat, with the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Some owners claimed the box changed their personality, that they became more aggressive, distant, even violent. Eventually, the Dybbuk Box landed in the hands of Jason Haxton, a museum director who intended to study it. He was skeptical at first. Soon, he experienced chronic coughing fits, hives, and internal bleeding with no clear cause. He documented his experiences, even filming them, doors opening on their own, strange lights flickering. Eventually, Haxton encased the box in a gold-lined ark surrounded by salt and protective charms, and buried it in an undisclosed location. He never opened it again. But the box wasn't done. Its legend only grew. In 2012, the Dybbuk Box inspired the horror film The Possession. The movie wasn't just fiction. Cast and crew later reported bizarre happenings on set: equipment failures, cold spots, and a storage facility that mysteriously burned down, containing all the props, including a replica of the box. Since then, the original Dybbuk Box has resurfaced. It now resides in Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum in Las Vegas. It's sealed behind glass, under constant surveillance, and surrounded by ritual protection. Visitors are warned not to approach if they are vulnerable, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. Some ignore the warnings, and some regret it. Numerous guests have reported extreme reactions while standing near it: sudden nausea or collapse, fainting spells and panic attacks and chest pain. One woman claimed she saw her deceased father's face reflected in the glass. Another said she felt something grip her wrist and whisper her name. A handful of visitors even reported nightmares that began that very night, always involving a woman with hollow eyes and a voice that wasn't hers. Is it real? Skeptics claim the Dybbuk Box is a modern myth engineered for viral storytelling. Some say Kevin Mannis fabricated the tale as part of an elaborate performance piece, mixing folklore, fiction, and fear to create a living story. And yet the consistency of reports, the physical symptoms, the profound emotional reactions, they leave behind questions. If it's just a box, why does everyone feel the same thing? And if it's a hoax, Why do so many people suffer after touching it? Maybe it's psychological. A modern tulpa, a cursed object created not by spirits, but by belief. Or maybe it really does house something older, something dark, something that doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. It just waits in the silence of old wood.
Some artifacts carry more than dust and time. They carry stories we were never meant to know, pain we were never meant to inherit, and a quiet warning: not everything lost wants to be found. From haunted tombs to cursed jewels, these objects don't just survive, they linger, they remind, and sometimes they take something back. If you felt the weight of these forgotten relics, subscribe for more deep dives into forbidden history, ancient mysteries, and the shadows of the past. Like, share, and turn on the bell, because some truths aren't buried, just waiting to be uncovered.